The book that I'm speaking about today, from personal experience of applying it, is called The Charisma Myth by Olivia Cabane. There are a lot of nuances in this book with respect to charisma and personal magnetism. Today I would like to explore with you the three main aspects that she discovered through her research and how I had applied it over the years as a practice, and I trust that you'll benefit greatly as well. So if a person thinks of charisma or personal magnetism, they may think that either a person has it or they don't. What she discusses in this book is anyone can practice bringing forth a higher degree of charisma or personal magnetism. The way I relate to this is authenticity. You naturally are charismatic and magnetic. We allow it to manifest by acknowledging three important areas. You can be aware of these three areas prior to conversations, during conversations, and after conversations with people. One-on-one, in person, one-on-one online, in groups, in public speaking. The three areas are power, presence, and warmth. She mentions that these attributes are what she found, and personally as well, as I have explored this book and applied it over the years, have also found to be the core attributes of someone that we would consider as charismatic or magnetic. Number one is power. The way I relate to this is being on purpose, having a sense of direction. If a person has a sense of direction, we can say they know where they are going, then they manifest authentic power, which is distinct from force. And by that I mean specifically, the person does not try to control or manipulate the other person or group of people. Rather, they discuss the topics or they relate with people in a way that manifests as a sense of direction. People around them feel that they too have a sense of direction. They relate ideally to the conversation. The conversation flows. So power does not mean in this regard controlling or forceful. Then we have presence. Being deeply engaged in the interaction, deeply engaged in the conversation. By being deeply engaged in the conversation, present with the other person, actively listening to the other person, understanding them, which we could do deeply, and we can say surprisingly by practicing presence, what happens is the other person feels understood. You also understand the other person. You also discover relatability with the other person. It naturally arises in the communication. Being present. For example, right now as we're having this conversation, the purpose of this conversation is to benefit you greatly by sharing my insights from applying this book for many years. That's the purpose, so that you can benefit greatly. If you find relatability in this conversation, then you may apply some of the things that we discuss. You may go out and get the book. Or if you read the book, you may go and read the book again, which is what she talks about, the ability to influence through power. Yet we find that that naturally and authentically manifests if the person who is communicating the message has direction and is present. So right now I'm not thinking about yesterday or tomorrow or what I got to do an hour from now. I'm enjoying this conversation with you as we go for a walk. And as I have had many conversations over the years with many that watch my videos, I relate to this book in a way that I feel will be beneficial for those that I've communicated with, the comments that I've seen. I could do this easily, or easier, we could say, by being present. Now I'm going to talk about how I applied this and how you can as well. And I trust you'll find that there's no limit to how charismatic you can be, how magnetic you can be. Then we have warmth. Really understanding the other person. Seeking to understand their pains, their needs, their desires in life. Maybe they communicate challenges that they're experiencing. Through the purpose, the power, we could say, of benefiting them greatly, and by listening, by being present, and then hearing them out, we can respond in a way that is actually helpful to them, rather than perhaps if a person is not calibrated to another person, shaming, blaming, or condemning them, which I found to be not helpful. So true, authentic charisma and personal magnetism is the result, we can sum it up as being as you are on purpose. So here's how I practice this. During conversations with people, I'm aware of what I think, how I emotionally relate, and I am aware if I am trying to put on a persona, judge myself inharmoniously, judge them inharmoniously, overthink. And if any of those thoughts arise in mind, or if I happen to be doing any of those things, I simply become even more present to the conversation. Maybe in the first minute or so, in the earlier stages, this was challenging. Yet I found by being aware if I am on purpose or seeming to lack it, presence or seeming to lack it, warm, understanding or seeming to lack it. By being aware of these three areas during conversation, I can calibrate accordingly. For example, in power, if the conversation seems to lack direction, we can relate this over to our vision. I might say something like, let's explore this from the end. Let's see ourselves already at the end. And then from there, let's see how we relate to this particular challenge. Power. You see, not done from a place of force, rather from a place of calibrating from the end in a way that is present to what they are saying, what they are experiencing, warmth, understanding, not identifying with thoughts in an inharmonious way in relation to them, in relation to me, in relation to the interaction. And then clarity arises. Power is demonstrated in the conversation. And I don't form an identity around that. By that I mean, if I say something that contributes to clarity in the conversation and they say thank you, I don't form an identity around doing that in a way where, let's say, if it doesn't appear that I gave direction in our second conversation or third conversation, then I'm not doing something right. Why I say that is clarity could arise by me saying something, or they say something, or we both come up with an idea together. This is what I've been referring to as identificationlessness. I am not identified with the appearances. This nuance point is helpful because we acknowledge that we are authentically on purpose. As I always say, you are love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment for no reason. Thus, you don't need to seek for approval, validation, or confirmation in the conversations, because that might result in a person not being present. Because rather than listening to the other person to understand them in a way that's mutually beneficial, they may be saying things because they want the other person to approve of them, to validate them. That's what I mean by I don't form an identity around the appearances. That contributes to being present. The way I like to relate to this in conversations is there is no problem with them, there is no problem with me. They're not doing anything wrong, I am not doing anything wrong. There's no agenda that we need to stick to in order to get the result, because free-flowing, I trust, and they experience it as well, they feel that trust, that we will come up with an insight, whether they say it or I say it or we come up with it together, that will be helpful for them, that will be helpful for me, that would be in harmony with the vision. It naturally arises by being present. It naturally arises by being warm. And warm means, again, goodwill, genuinely caring about the other person, acknowledging them as a real person who has a vision, who has desires. And what I'm interested in is a mutually harmonious relationship. Benefit for me, benefit for them. I have no interest in denying what they desire. I have no interest in shaming or condemning them, or thinking about them in a way that if they share something, that I consider it as they have a problem, or they should not think that way, or they need to think the way I think. I'm going to pretend that they didn't say that because I'm going to think that they said what I wanted them to say. That kind of thinking, the other person can feel. And they might not feel understood in the conversation. I trust that there is a mutually beneficial outcome for both of us. As mentioned, what I was doing was practicing this during conversations, prior to conversations, after conversations. The way I would do this essentially was on my phone, I would write power, presence, and warmth. And having considered what she had mentioned in the book and my experiences over the years, I know what that means to me. Simply being on purpose, that's power. Not forcing. Presence, being deeply engaged in the conversation. If I feel awkward, if let's say they feel awkward, that's fine. We allow those emotions to be released. And then there's warmth. So I asked myself the question, during this interaction, was I representing power, presence, and warmth? And to what degree? Because I trust that you have found as well, there's no limit to the degree of charisma and personal magnetism we can manifest. Another way of saying it is personal magnetism and charisma is a natural manifestation of unconditional self-acceptance, which also happens to manifest as accepting others the way they are, thus manifesting as presence and warmth. Even what could appear as difficult conversations, I trust through this practice, you find that it's easier for you to be present rather than perhaps a fight or flight response. A person listens to the other person and they discover that by listening, they understand the other person's perspective. And interestingly enough, they start to understand your perspective. So with power, presence, and warmth, rather than invalidating what a person thinks, how they emotionally relate, how they behave, the other person or a group of people, we find relatability. We find equilibrium. And knowing that there's always an equilibrium, which we can call a point of harmony, there's always a mutually beneficial outcome. There's always a mutually beneficial relationship. Even if it's not apparent right now, that's okay. because during the interactions we discover it. Knowing this, we operate from what we've been referring to as the divine center, I am. If you know certainly that you are love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, you don't seek it in conversations, so you stay present. You are present to what the other person's saying. You're present to how you feel. You're present to how you relate with each other. You also are not afraid that you won't get what you want. Thus, you are naturally warm. I trust you've noticed this. If a person is afraid that they won't get love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, or anything, let's say, that they desire from the interaction, then they may try to control or manipulate, and that would not represent being warm. They might not even be present because they may be trying to control the interaction, take it in a direction that they want, which is actually not in a mutually beneficial outcome for both. And instead of power, they're moving into the force territory, we could say. So by accepting themselves unconditionally as love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, they don't judge the other person, they don't overthink, the conversation naturally flows. They don't try to put on a persona, pretend to be someone that they're not, which is an illusion because they are love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. What is being discussed here is to be as you are, not for this or that reason, which I found manifests naturally as power, presence, and warmth. Because if you are love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, then you're on what appears as a journey to actualizing that in various shapes and forms in your life. Ideal, harmonious relationships, friendships, business success, etc. They're on the journey to actualizing it, so you're flowing on purpose. We could say you flow on purpose. And what happens then is there's no need to try to control the other person. There's no need to try to force or manipulate the other person. You speak from your heart, and if they want to do the deal, great. If they don't want to do the deal, great. You are detached from outcome. You are completely detached. You could say the only thing you're attached to is the fact that you exist. As reality is love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. Which then you appear to be on purpose, which is power. So I was aware, and I continue to practice this. I'm aware during conversations, prior to conversations, after conversations, the degree of power, presence, and warmth. And it can be simplified through unconditional self-acceptance, allowing that authenticity to manifest as charisma and personal magnetism. Now you see what we mean by anyone can be charismatic and personally magnetic, because there are different styles of charisma. There's different styles of personal magnetism, and your style is the best style for you. I trust you'll see it. People may even start to comment. They may call you charismatic or magnetic, more and more so with increasing frequency. And if you ask them, why do you say that? They may point to particular attributes that are distinct your style, your individual style. So, as mentioned, power, presence, and warmth. If you acknowledge that you are love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, for no reason at all, the guards go down, we could say. You are naturally warm in interactions. And then all of them are combined. So, if let's say I saw an opportunity, and by that I mean after an interaction, I said, I could be more present in the next interaction. I could have been more present in the conversation with that person. That's fine. No shame and condemnation. Now, in the next conversation you have with them, or the next conversation you have with another person, or if you're doing live events and public speaking, in your next event, you can be more present. You can say, be more present, set the intention. And one of the ways that we can be more present is mention, drop that false identity construct, that persona that is made up of beliefs based on conditions. We do that by being still, not thinking the inharmonious thoughts of separation, allowing your emotions to be released in the moment. During the interaction, you could do this. And then you'll find that you're present to the conversation. You're present with the other person. And we can say, because I found this as well, that by being present, power, true power, which again is distinct from force, naturally manifests as a conversation that is mutually harmonious. You don't see conflict and unnecessary argumentations of the intellect with the other person because we're moving towards a mutually beneficial outcome. Warmth also manifests naturally. You'll notice this because illusions of separation, as we say, which are the beliefs that belong to that persona, are not there. And you find that it's also easier to do this with each interaction. By again being aware of those three simple key points that she discussed. Just three: power, presence, and warmth. So a way that we can practice it is you could do what I did. I read the book. I found relatability in a bunch of the things that she said. I saw it from my personal experience. And then I said, I can practice this more so. And continue to practice it. And you can practice it all the time. As a matter of fact, I'm practicing it right now. I practice it with each video that I make. I practice it with each conversation. Be aware of, prior to the conversation, am I being as I am? Authentic power, authentic presence, authentic warmth. Am I relating with the other person or group of people harmoniously from the premise of no separation? Authentic power, authentic presence, authentic warmth, not because of trying to get something from the other person or prove a point, which again is just confirmation bias. Rather, we don't identify with that. The only thing you could say we identify with is true identity. Unconditional love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. No separation. Completeness, wholeness. And warmth naturally manifests. And what you could do is, after the interactions, if you notice that you could optimize one of these three areas, is you can ask yourself the question, what are ways that I could optimize? And clarity arises as you're operating from that sure foundation of power, presence, and warmth that arises naturally from your true nature, which is love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. That's why I like to relate this together, because I found that over the years, when I related power, presence, and warmth to my true nature, it became easier to discern the degree of power, presence, and warmth, and know what to do next time or not do next time. Or you may work with someone who has this ability. What I have found is that there are people that I met that are, let's say, without practicing this, very charismatic in this way that we discuss. And we discuss it in this way because true charisma and personal magnetism is unconditional. In other words, if a person is charismatic and they're in their flow and they're in power, presence, and warmth, let's say, and someone says something to them and it triggers them, they release that identification if that identification is there, or they're unaffected by that identification as they are not identified with that conditional belief. And they continue to manifest power, presence, and warmth. And people say that's a magnetic person authentically, charismatic person authentically. So true authenticity is related closely to power, presence, and warmth, which relates to charisma and personal magnetism, which arises naturally from your true nature as love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. So as mentioned, if you meet people that are like this, sometimes they might not know how to explain it, what they're doing. Yet you could study them and see what they're doing and relate it over to what they think. That's one of the benefits of listening to people and understanding each person's perspective. You will hear so many things that can be very helpful for you. If you happen to know people that understand this and practice this, I personally recommend getting around them and maybe starting a mastermind with them, or engage in these kinds of conversations where you could look at the interactions that you've been having, be it romantic relationships, friendships, family, business relationships, and you can relate it back to power, presence, and more. This is what I do with some of my clients. And they may say, what can I do in this particular scenario to manifest a higher degree of warmth or presence or power? And the person then can engage in a conversation with you and talk about their experiences, their reference experiences. And through the conversations, clarity arises. So as mentioned, a lot of nuances in the book. Wonderful book, worth revisiting again and again. And I love the fact that she had summarized it into those three areas: power, presence, and warmth. And it was a blessing to enjoy the conversation with you today, discussing my experiences of applying power, presence, and warmth. We can engage in a lot more conversations where we discuss this. Yet I feel this is ample for our purpose for today. And I trust you can apply this in a way that will be beneficial for you. A simple question: is this power-based? Is this warmth-based? Is this presence-based? Or you can simplify it further, as I say, flow-based. And then you know what to do, what not to do next time. And as you continue to do this, mind is purified from, as we say, the illusory beliefs that generate the illusions of separation that manifest as lack of power, lack of presence, lack of warmth, lack of personal magnetism, lack of charisma. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's conclude this with an auto-suggestion to further encourage. You could say, as I accept myself and people the way they are, it automatically manifests as authentic charisma and authentic personal magnetism as I am aware of my degree of power, presence, and warmth. As I continue to manifest a higher degree of power, presence, and warmth, people appear to be more so in harmony with me as I am in harmony with them in a mutually harmonious way.